Hi everybody, my name is Brandy Flynn and I am the owner of Brandy J Flynn Counseling and Consulting Services, where I am a counselor, a consultant, and an advocate for mental health. So what you're going to watch is a video of a panel talk which is called Breaking the Barrier of Mental Health, where me and along other people in the mental health in the community will talk about the #1 stigma in our community, which is mental health. The questions are going to be asked of why are we afraid to talk about mental health? Why do we not take mental health so seriously? And how do we react when someone is telling us that they are going through a lot of stuff? I hope this video educates you guys about the importance of mental health. And if you know that you may need some help, or you know somebody needs some help, maybe that you can show them this video, or you can reach out to somebody and get the help that you need. So I hope you enjoy the video.
And you have a difficult time adjusting. And what had happened with me is that I had experienced a lot of death. I had experienced job transition. Last year I had never been fired before in my life, never. And the job I was at in Cincinnati, they wanted to force me to resign, and I chose to be terminated, because if you want me gone, well, I'm going to at least try to collect unemployment. So I got another job in Kentucky. I was there for 4 months and was fired a week before Christmas. And I was a dorm director, so I had nowhere. They told me I had to pack up and be out in 3 days. Fired me at the end of the day on a Monday and told me I need to be out by Friday. So I had 3 days to literally pack up my whole life. I've been out of the house for 6 years at this point. So I don't have family in Kentucky. I've been completely independent and now everything is gone. And I have to find a place for my stuff. I have to find a moving company. I have to find a place to go live. And this is a couple months after I had the diagnosis of depression and adjustment disorder. And now I've got to make another adjustment. The day before I started that job, my best friend's husband drowned trying to save his son. Adjustment issues. I had so much change, and then even in February I lost an uncle, and then 2 months later I lost my grandmother, and then just this past Monday I lost my other uncle. Back in October I started having reproductive issues, and I'm single, no kids, never married, and my fertility is being jeopardized. And then a month after that, I get a call from my doctor saying, we need you to come back in. We found some cancerous cells. Now I'm 32, or 31 at that point. Cancer? And five years before that, I had already had an operation to remove cancerous cells. And so I'm like, this is a lot. Mental health experts, Brandy can tell you that the top 3 causes for depression are moving, death, and divorce. Well, I've never been married, so I'm not experiencing divorce, but I've got the other 2, got those down pat. And so I had to learn, okay, what do I do? And for the longest, I just thought I was in a funk. And I think that that's how a lot of us in our community describe it. We was just like, I'm just in a funk. I'm just having a bad day. Well, when your funk is funky for 2 and 3 weeks, there's something wrong.
Right.
There is something wrong. And it doesn't mean that you're so jacked up that there's just something wrong with you, that you can't get right, or you just need to let time go and you'll be okay. But I had to realize that for a few years, I had not been feeling myself. And it took me working in a dormitory with 300 kids between the ages of 17 and like 22. And most of them were freshmen, so most of them are really between the ages of 17 and 19, who had issues. And they're coming to you for counseling, and they want to talk. And it's like, I don't know how to help you because I feel the same way. And I remember calling home and saying, I need help. And that was the first time that I had actually really admitted to someone. And even making that call to my parents was terrifying. And thinking, well, they're not going to be upset, but it's going to cause alarm. And I feel like, especially in the African American community, what is mom going to say? What is daddy going to say? I don't want them to, they're going to tell me something crazy like go soak in Epsom salt, or, or, just pray, or, mom's going to come down here and try to cook me a batch of fried chicken and cornbread and all this other stuff, and she's just going to feed me to death. And that's going to fix everything. But then when she leaves, I want to feel even worse because now my comfort zone is gone and I still have all these emotions and these feelings that I didn't deal with. And that was always my comfort zone. I would just go home. I would just go home. And I couldn't get home. So I had to figure out something to do. And after I went through counseling, and unfortunately I couldn't even continue because I lost my job. But I realized that I was able to utilize a lot just in that time frame, just in those short couple months of understanding what I was going through. I never thought it was crazy, but I never could really connect the dots. I couldn't really figure out that I feel very close to people and jobs. I love working, and I find a lot of fulfillment in working because I've always had jobs where I've been able to help people. And so,
did you ever have thoughts of hurting yourself?
Former Disney star Lee Thompson-Young was found dead, but Young's manager said the actor, quote, tragically took his own life.
Soul Train legend Don Cornelius has died.
He died from what investigators are saying at this time was an apparent suicide.
Violator Entertainment founder Chris Lighty has died at the premature age of 43. Sources are saying his death was a suicide via a gunshot wound to the head.
Depression is an illness that affects more than 14 million Americans. But Black Americans seek help for depression far less often than whites do. For Black men, sometimes it's the stigma of mental illness that prevents them from being open about their struggle with depression. 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 Depression.
I mean, we're saying that Black men are 5 times more likely than Black women are to commit suicide. So, I mean, there's a real problem going on, and still we're not addressing it.
There's a real need for the conversation to begin. I mean, Black men increasingly over time have actually been more successful at committing suicide than women. Women tend to attempt suicide using more passive measures. Men tend to actually commit suicide using more aggressive measures. So in an instance where a man is contemplating suicide, 5 to 1, he's going to actually commit suicide.
Suck it up and be a man. I feel bad. I didn't mean to yell at him. My moods are so unpredictable.
I feel sad.
So when was the first time you knew that you were depressed?
Iman had to fend for Iman. So I began to stay in my room, cry myself sometimes, and I felt alone all the time, basically. Even though I did have my mom and a sister that loved me, I knew I had to shield that type of pain from them.
So what made you think that you should take your own life as opposed to something else?
I just had it. I just really had it. I was tired of fighting. I was tired of going through, because this wasn't the first time that love knocked me down or anybody else said something. I was always bullied. My life was just hard. I was tired of it. So I was like, you know what? Why not just go? Go.
So we expect our black boys and black men to be angry, but we don't expect them to be sad or depressed or even to have days where they just typically feel blue. And I think if we get to a point where we can understand that these are human emotions, they're not gender specific, then we can allow not only our black girls but our black boys to be able to express how deeply they're hurt and how deeply they are in pain. We have to actually experience these things. We have to talk about these things because our boys are also dying from this.
I am alone. Everything feels so pointless.
I feel so lost and anxious.
Things are going well. Why do I feel like this?
Why do I have sex so much?
What's the point of life?
What's wrong with me?
I can't sleep. I can't eat.
I feel sad.
I feel like I'm losing my mind.
I can't do this anymore.
I'm not crazy.
I am not crazy. I'm not crazy.
I'm not crazy.
I am not crazy.
I am not crazy.
I'm not crazy.
And I remember Chris Rock telling me once that 4 of his friends who were comics committed suicide, shot themselves in the head, you know? So it's the funniest person that you know who could be the one who's suffering the most.
So we have to be aware that when we talk about depression, it's not just about having sleep issues, appetite issues, being sad all the time. Depression can manifest itself in so many different ways, including rage, including the slow suicide that we've talked about as far as very destructive behaviors.
I guess the hard part was not knowing. I mean, I guess I'll always feel like maybe I could have done something. But I didn't have a clue.
And I just feel like if we just talk about it and we start to recognize signs and we encourage our young black men, our little boys, to feel what they feel, express how they feel, and if they notice something in themselves or if we notice something in them, to allow them to get help. We expect them to be angry and pissed off and acting out and in jail. But we don't want them to show signs of sadness. And sometimes we need them to show that so that they can get to that place of healing. And so check out the documentary, support it. It's completely independent. Like, we're doing everything out of pocket. So unless we get funding and grants and all of that, we do have 501 C3 status now, which is a blessing because now everything that everyone donates is tax deductible. But beyond that, I believe that this film is more than just an artistic expression of a social issue. It's a movement, and it's something that has been swept under the rug for so long, and now we're seeing more and more of us die by suicide, and nobody knows why. And so we're wondering, well, how could this happen? And when we pay a little closer attention to these people's lives, we're seeing that, wow, they were dealing with a lot, but they never told anybody. So I'm grateful to be here. I thank y'all for coming out and just having a discussion because it's needed. It's necessary. It's far beyond being necessary. It's just something that we have to care enough about what's going on around us, you know.
But what do you do when you throw those ideas out, throw those recommendations, throw those referrals, throw those suggestions? Right. They still won't do it. They still come for a cry for help. But guess what? As a mental health professional, you have to treat every case like a new case. You can't judge them on the past, what they did before.
But see, that's something I didn't know. You know, from you all standpoint, I mean, like you say, it's a brand new, you give people a brand new start each time they come in. You know?
That you have to.
You have to.
So it's like, what do you do when you have that freaking flyer that knows, okay, if I go to the hospital wanting to shoot myself, let me get in at 4 o'clock because meals come out at 5. Right. That way I can get to the hospital at 6 because I know the dinner plate's coming out at 7. I can get me a good nap, be over at MMH and I know they're going to kick me out anyway.
Right. That's like jail.
Right. Jeez. And I can go over to MMH and I know they'll kick me out. Baby mama be back to the club by 2 a.m. so I can go hail the cab that they're going to pay for me to go knock on her door and I can get in. It's the truth. It's the truth.
Oh, so let me help me understand that. So people will, that's not far-fetched, that people will basically go through the system. What's the motivation? So they can have something to eat?
Eat, sleep, free medicine.
Do they give you a drug to calm you down? I mean, is that?
So you get high, you get a meal,
and you shelter.
And you get a bed.
I can write you a referral for DCS, Brandy Flynn counseling. Here. And guess what? Out of town. Turn that phone off for 24 hours and say, I'm not going to turn it back on. I'm not talking to anybody. All emails off. Go relax. Be in your own zone. And when you come back, a total new person. Sometimes, like he said, it's better if you leave that abusive situation or where you're being neglected or anything and it's time for a fresh start. But sometimes that fresh start, you're a total new person. Because like this young lady stated earlier, the issue is finding someone who cares. And if you don't care about yourself, no one will care about you. You can talk to anyone, you can come up to Lakeside, get 500 assessments, back to back to back. But if you're not willing to help yourself, no one can help you. Because we can't give you advice, no one can tell you where to go, what direction to take, but you have to be willing to try, see what helps and what goes best. And one thing I've noticed when doing research, seeing things on the news, following up what's going on in the field, let alone with mental health. A lot of suicide, depression, things happen because of sadness, hopelessness, not knowing where to go. not knowing what to do, not having anyone to turn to. So it's the main solution I found is self-care. Self-care. And medicines might not be for everybody. Some people say, I don't want to get on medicines. I don't want it to control me. But this self-care comes before you get on those medicines. It comes before those issues come forth. So that's what I wanted to encourage. I wanted to encourage self-care, coping with stress, coping with issues, being able to relate. So you won't get to that point, and you'll be able to manage.
When we think about mental health, and as she said, we want to have a conversation. We don't want to just sit up here and lecture. We ain't in school, right? So when we think about mental health, what are some things that come to mind? You know, mental health and even, I guess, just deal with mental health first, and then we're going to talk about mental health in our Christian walk, if that be the case. Let's talk about it. That becomes the most asinine thing for any person, and then it begins to ask the question, do you have the heart of Christ? If a church is not leading themselves after, and this is one of the things that we're, even in the midst of our church, shifting culture. I've been there about 18 months, but shifting culture to the point that we serve people. We serve people because that kind of attitude speaks of Pharisees and Sadducees and not Christians. They're because they're not followers of Christ. They're not. I don't care. You can say you saved, you can say who you say you follow whoever, but that does not speak to a person that is a follower of Jesus Christ. Because to say to a person, you know, I can't help you. You know what I'm saying? I can't show you the room where prayer is, but I can show you prayer. Christ never came to people with a perception of demeaning them. When the woman was found in the act of adultery, they were trying to set Jesus up. Jesus never even had a conversation with the woman about none of that, about her issues. He addressed the people. If any one of y'all standing out here ain't got no sin, cast the first stone. All of us got your issue may not be my issue, but all of us got something. And all of us have at some point been addicted to something. You may not have been addicted to drugs, but you've been addicted to him or her. You've been addicted to eating. You've been addicted to this or that. Don't act like y'all ain't been addicted. Nobody that's been addicted. Now, let me let you know. This is how I talk on Sunday morning. Because if people cannot be real when you come to church, where can you be? You're going to be real in the beauty shop. You're going to be real in the barber shop. You need to be able to say, okay, this is what God is saying. This is how I lead my life. Because just like you tell your kids, you don't get advice from everybody else, right? You don't want your child learning anything about life from their friends, because their friends don't know. And in the same way, a pastor should not want his parishioners or her parishioners going and getting information from people that don't know. So you're in the beauty shop getting life counseling. Somebody telling you about your marriage at the barber shop. Girl, I wouldn't stay. They ain't got no man. Right? And so to answer your question is those kinds of organizations or churches that deal with people like that have to give an account for that. They have to, because they're not operating. Every building that got a cross on it ain't got Christ in it. Not every building that has a cross on it got Christ in it. Some folk are just operating out of their own stuff. And so you gotta be careful. That's why the Bible says, try the spirit by the spirit.
That's right.
Not, you gotta be careful who you go to for help. What churches you go to for help. Because some people will tell you, well, you ain't a member, so we can't help you. When Jesus was feeding the 5,000, he asked, okay, now which one of y'all are members? It's about helping people. It's about helping people. A person nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm about to ruin my life because I'm going to get addicted to drugs. Nobody wakes up saying that. Nobody says, I'm going to lose my whole marriage because I want to be an adulterer. There has to be something going on that ain't nobody speaking to, that makes me cope with these particular things that are stressors or things in my life that I'm going through, that has a domino effect that ruins other areas. Because I could still be dealing with the fact Daddy wasn't there, and so because Daddy wasn't there, I drink. Or the fact that, hey, alcoholism is hereditary. It runs in people's family. That's why some people can drink all day and never get addicted. And some take one drink and they're hooked for life. But nobody talks about that in church. I will never advise you to leave your husband or your wife, but I will never advise you to stay in a situation like that. Because you gotta be willing to know and be honest to say, okay, there's a difference between taking the literal word as literal and understanding that there are some variations between this and what this says. Yeah, God don't like divorce, but he didn't desire you to get killed either. Right? So you gotta know when to get in and get out. And the other part of that is when you talk about all of these relationships and things of that nature, when we deal with relationship counseling and all of that deals with your mental disposition. If you got people, if their marriage or their relationship ain't right, their life ain't right. So how you gonna tell me about my marriage when yours jacked up? And everybody know you've been cheating on your wife for the last 30 years. You got the lady sitting next to your wife. How are you going to advise on my relationship? You're going to be biased because you feel like, I ought to just sit there and take it, or your position is woman is subservient to man and that she has no authority and she has no voice and she just needs to sit there and be quiet. And as a result, that's how you tell you the best way to advise or to get an understanding of how a pastor is going to counsel you is based on how they preach. If all they're saying is everybody's going to hell and this or that, or some people got they push button or they soapbox issue. Women, you need to submit to your husband. And if that's all the thing, well, I might not want to see him for marriage counseling. Right? Or if everybody's going to hell for anything, I may not want to see them about my stuff. Right? Because at the end of the day, I come to find God at the end of it. Can't find God and find me. And the problem is, many of us, we got God, but we ain't found us. And so you lost just out there wondering, just trying to figure out who the world you are. Because everybody's forced to God, and we've never dealt with any practical issues because we got all theology. We know we quote scriptures, with our eyes closed. But when it says, okay, now how do you deal with this? You can't find scripture on that. How do you deal with the fact that I'm in this marriage or I'm in this relationship, but I don't want to be here? Can you find scripture on that? Can you find scripture on the fact that my mama let her boyfriend mess with me, and here I am grown and cannot physically be intimate with my spouse because it still reminds me of what her boyfriend did to me, and every time a man breathes on me, it reminds me of that. Can you find a scripture on that? So if we ain't ready for it, I need to refer you to somebody that can help you. Because those are the things that we see in our pews every week. But everybody saying, just jump up, name it and claim it, snap it and grab it. Turn around 3 times, and I'm turning out of it. You turn right back into the same stupid stuff. Right? You turn right back into the same issue, right back into you. When you get home, by the time you get home, it's the level. You get home, that nigga still on the couch. it's still there. And you find yourself now questioning God. God, how am I still dealing with this? Or not being willing to say to you, okay, you are the problem. You won't let that person in. You won't let them love you. You got some stuff that you need to deal with, and before you get married, before y'all get married, you need to go to counseling. I can't tell you the number of things in marriage counseling that have come out that I told a couple, wait, deal with that first, and then we'll talk later. Well, she you know what I'm saying? She don't trust me. Why don't you trust? Well, I don't trust no man. Why don't you trust no man? Because my daddy. All right, we need to get that first. My daddy did this, or my daddy wasn't ever there. I can't tell you the number of girls and women, grown women, that still got daddy issues. And cannot love people, or first of all, love themselves, because they're trying to still blame themselves because daddy wasn't there. And don't let's harbor on the women. We got men that got daddy issues. And I don't even know how to deal, so I can't be a father to my son because I don't even know how to be a father to my son because I ain't never had nobody to be a father to me.
And somebody had said those words to me, those exact words.
And watch this. Don't use it as, don't accept it sometimes. Be careful not to accept it as a cop-out. Sometimes we can write on all that nigga just deadbeat. When the truth of the matter is, he probably need counseling for it. Right. Because when you told him, I'm pregnant, and then they told him it's a boy, he got scared to death. Because innately in him, he's a leaver. Because he was left. So he finds a reason to leave because out of mind, out of sight, out of mind. But it's easy for us to say, oh, you ain't nothing, but he ain't dealt with the fact that he don't even realize why his daddy wasn't there. And some people respond to it differently. Some say, man, I'm going to be what my dad never was, and they jump all in, and that ain't safe either. So they, ain't nobody gonna do nothing to my son, right? Well, I'm gonna be hitting on, right?